Okay. Canada's broken because we're stupid.
I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain.
Skepticism. It's the same thing happens on the bloody energy front. It's like, well, Australia won't build coal-generating electrical plants, but they'll ship their bloody coal to China, where they're going to build much dirtier plants. And the same thing applies to Canada. If we shut down our energy industry, which our bloody, insane, narcissistic, delusional, traitorous Prime Minister happens to think is a good idea and seems to be working as hard as he can to manage, all that's going to happen is that we're going to cede the ground to people like Putin, who we also turned into a radical enemy with his hands on the control pump for Europe. I mean, I don't see how we could be stupider here in the West if we actually took courses in stupidity and tried as hard as...
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. We've got a very interesting video. Bill Gates is going to drop a bomb on the climate change crisis. Those tree huggers are not going to like what Bill Gates has to say, but I don't trust it. We're going to watch a clip here with JOrdon Peterson explaining why Canadians should not trust this person, Bill Gates, anything that comes out of his mouth. Like, anytime he's presenting a case, I'm always wondering what he's really up to. JOrdon Peterson is going to expose a lot right here. We'll get right into the full interview where Bill Gates not denies climate change now, but says that we need to take the pedal off the gas. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because he's buying all the farmland. It's crazy. Let's take a look. JOrdon Peterson, always a pleasure to watch. Hope he's doing well. This clip is from a ways back, so he has made a comeback though. Anyhow, let's get into this. Bill Gates, JOrdon Peterson, Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get into this.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
To what end, Michael? Like, I read about, the notion that we need to, turn to plant-based foods and insect-based protein in the future, and that, meat production and all the cow methane are contributing to the degradation of the environment. But like, what do you see this as a plan, or just as a part of the globalist utopian, ideologically blind stupidity? Because I mean, farmers do pollute. There is runoff from fertilizer. It does cause algal blooms, for example, in the water, and these are problems. I don't think they're insurmountable problems. But you're pointing to something that's more malevolent and deeper and programmatic, and we don't want to go there without questioning that presumption. I always think if you can explain it with stupidity, you don't have to explain it with malevolence.
Well, as you know, be careful with that one, because sometimes we do have to go to malevolence in this case.
I know we do, yeah.
And I watch your show enough to know you know exactly why this is happening. And let's talk about this. If the Dutch farmers, let's take this as a premise, are the most efficient in the world, or let's just say they're the second most efficient, why would you knock them out of the saddle to get somebody else to produce the food? Where? Indian farmers? I mean, who's going to produce this food in a much less efficient way that would create even more pollution? This is clearly about control. Also, there's something that you never hear in any press that I've heard in the United States is the tri-state city. Tri-state city is this smart city that they're proposing to build between the tri-states are Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany. So this mega city, basically, that would take up all this farmland in that area, and which would bring huge amounts of more people into this area, right? So the tri-state city is something you don't hear much about, but that's another part of this plan. There was a fire about maybe 10 days ago. I went to it right after the next morning, and it's at a picnic distribution center, which is there was an investment, $600 million into this picnic food distribution center from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, coincidentally, and it burned down, right? And so that brought a little, raised some eyebrows. Why did that thing just burn down? There's many of them. There's others in Netherlands that are growing. But the bottom line is the Bill and Melinda, or Bill Gates, is buying up farmland, as you know, all over the place.
I know. He is the biggest private landowner in the United States right now, and the land that he's buying up, he's taking out of food production. And it seems to be because he's obsessed about meat production, at least in part, doesn't believe that that's part of a sustainable future. And so, but I do share your skepticism. It's the same thing happens on the bloody energy front. It's like, well, Australia won't build coal-generating electrical plants, but they'll ship their bloody coal to China, where they're going to build much dirtier plants. And the same thing applies to Canada. If we shut down our energy industry, which our bloody, insane, narcissistic, delusional, traitorous prime minister happens to think is a good idea and seems to be working as hard as he can to manage, all that's going to happen is that we're going to cede the ground to people like Putin, who we also turned into a radical enemy with his hands on the control pump for Europe. I mean, I don't see how we could be stupider here in the West if we actually took courses in stupidity and tried as hard as we could. We seem to be doing everything we can to break everything as rapidly as possible. And then I wonder too, has it got to the point where the people who think, that you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs and there's too many people on the planet think that this is some sort of like needle's eye that we have to go through, all this mass starvation and death so that we end up with a sustainable population. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's a dim and grim scenario. But as you said, why would you take the Dutch farmers out of business when they're so unbelievably hyper-productive and efficient? It's not like there's too much food, especially not if we don't have farmers.
If anything, I would be trying to get a large agricultural institute here in Netherlands to teach other farmers how to be as efficient as Dutch farmers are, replicate these farmers. In Afghanistan, actually, many of the farmers coming over, I was out in the farms quite a lot, were actually Dutch farmers to teach Afghans how to do things better. But the bottom line is, as you can see, there is a huge, I watch you all the time, you know what's happening. There's a huge authoritarian the desire to have a one world order is clearly strong. And this isn't the first time it's happened. As you know, it's a constant in human behavior. And also, as somebody who studies the human psyche a lot, as you do, you realize pulling these farmers off of their traditional farms unroots them. It cuts their anchor, their boat anchor. They're going to be drifting, culturally, so that makes them much easier to, you can't control farmers well. That's why Stalin wanted to get rid of the farmers. Stalin had to get rid of those farmers because farmers have a mind of their own. Same with Mao. You got to get rid of those farmers because they think for themselves. And likewise here, these Dutch farmers think for themselves. And so they're the bad guys. To me, they're the great guys. These are the people
me
that
too,
have to
man.
defend. That's our backbone. They are our backbone. That's why I flew to Netherlands from Mexico. I mean, that's how important this is.
Okay, so what have you discovered on the ground there? You've been talking to farmers. First of all, tell us about how the protests were organized, what their scope is, and why the farmers are doing this and what they hope to accomplish.
Well, the farmers in Netherlands are amazingly cognizant of what's happening. Many people that I talk with around the world don't realize, these other things like the WEF, WEF and these sorts of things. But the Dutch farmers are talking about it in detail. They're like, the nitrogen is nonsense, and it's all about Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates is trying to do this, and they'll go into great detail. They know exactly what's happening. They're trying to take our land because of this, and that, and the other. And, they know it. They're not just like in Panama, it's another story. Panama is just like, give us cheap gas, give us cheap cheese, cheap this and cheap that, and we'll go home, right? They're easily satisfied. Not the Dutch farmers, they're more sophisticated. These are serious players here. And again, that's why I jumped on an airplane. If people like this are blocking streets around Netherlands, and we got the German farmers joining up with them and they're blocking the border together, German and Dutch farmers, right? Polish farmers, I love Poland. I spent 2 years there. Polish farmers are making videos in support of Dutch farmers. That's how much look, that started in Canada, jumped over to the United States. It's over here now. I mean, it's really growing. This courage is spreading. And so, and you see Italian farmers, Spanish farmers, people are rising up. And the more they realize what's actually happening, because, the man behind the curtain is the WEF, the World Economic Forum. Of course, we're going to have to deal with China, but at this rate, look, if Germany falls from these energy issues, which is looking pretty likely at this point, China is going to peel off the rock too, right? As are we economically, right? So,
for sure. Yeah, we cannot sustain the collapse of Germany. That's absolutely 100% obvious. That would be an utter bloody catastrophe.
If Germany collapses, EU's gone, right? For a while, right? I mean, the EU will probably dissolve. That's my guess. I don't know. We'll see when time unfolds. But obviously, that'll take our economies with it, and China, right, and Japan. And of course, Japan imports, what, 60, 70%? All these island nations and island state like Hawaii that import, Hawaii, 90% of their food imported, right? They are going to be in for a world of hurt. Japan imports most of its food. And, you know, some of these countries that I have to, and I kind of, I should say, maybe insulted the French for a while years ago and saying, why are they defending all these small farmers all the time? Now I see the French wisdom. You know, these small farmers, that resilience, and these small, you know, when you go to France and you go to, I'm sure you've been to France, and their small farmers everywhere provide a great deal of resilience, right? And that's why in Netherlands, if they lose, these farmers are vital for that. They're as important as their army. I mean, without these farmers, you're somebody else's. You're in somebody else's pocket. Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations, you're spending more money on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
I did apologize to the president. President was offended by the act.
All right, guys, we'll cross over now to the Bill Gates interview where he says that we need to take our foot off the gas on climate change, treating it as a crisis, that we've made a lot of goals that aren't attainable and maybe not as necessary as people thought. What is Bill Gates up to? Let's find out.
Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates publishing a memo that suggests adopting a different view and changing strategy towards addressing climate change. It is a rebuttal to what he calls, quote, the doomsday scenario, which Gates says is, quote, causing much of the climate community to focus too much on near-term emission goals, and it's diverting resources, he says, from the most effective things we should be doing to improve life in a warming world. He writes, quote, this is a chance to refocus on the metric that should count even more than emissions and temperature change, improving lives. Our chief goal should be to prevent suffering, particularly for those in the toughest conditions who live in the world's poorest countries. Although climate change will hurt poor people more than anyone else, for the vast majority of them, it will not be the only or even the biggest threat to their lives and welfare. The biggest problems are poverty and disease, just as they always have been. Now, I spoke to Bill Gates in an exclusive TV interview, and I asked him to explain what he hopes people take away from this new message.
Climate is a super important problem. There's enough innovation here to avoid super bad outcomes. We won't achieve our best goal, the 1.5 or even the 2 degrees. And as we go about trying to minimize that, we have to frame it in terms of overall human welfare, not just everything should be solely for climate.
How much of your own view is a function of just contextually what's happening in the world versus what I think you've thought for a long time about the climate?
Well, if the aid budgets to poor countries were continuing to go up the way they did over the last 25 years, then the trade-offs between climate action and saving children's lives wouldn't be as acute as it is now that these budgets are going down, and going down quite a bit. And so the plea here is to say, okay, let's take that very limited money and not have some partitioned off for particular causes. Let's measure it all in terms of the human welfare. How do you help those countries?
You were a huge supporter of the Paris Climate Accord at the time. And I wonder now, when you look back, given that you're changing sort of the metric with which you use, do you say to yourself that the Paris Climate Accord and its goals were misplaced?
No, not at all. That was a key milestone because the countries of the world said, hey, this is a mutual problem. The temperature rise, the entire world will experience a temperature rise from the emissions from all these countries. So getting countries to commit was very, very important. The one thing about that accord that turned out not to be realistic was the ambitious goal of staying to 1.5 degrees. We won't be able to do that. even if you took all the money away from health, you wouldn't be able to do that. So now, the question is, okay, what temperature level are we going to end up at?
Make this promise.
Very important to minimize that, but not at the expense of everything else.
Okay, but in the context of not at the expense of everything else, so many businesses, companies, including Microsoft, made pledges around being net zero, trying to get, in some cases, negative net zero, meaning going back and paying for their carbon production from earlier. Was that a mistake? Now that you're
not at all.
So that's not the message that you're trying to suggest.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Why have we been able to lower the future emissions? It's because companies like Microsoft and many others focused on this initiative. And it's very important that those companies help advance these new technologies by being the early customers for things like nuclear fission, fusion, clean cement. They're driving the prices down. And that's the magic thing. When you get the clean stuff to be cheaper than the dirty stuff, then you can take that whole area of emissions and saying, okay, just normal market economics works there.
When the climate activists who have been very supportive of what you've done and you've been very supportive of what they've done read this, and if Greta Thunberg is reading this and saying to herself, my goodness, he seems like he is reversing himself, what would you tell her?
I'd say, wasn't the goal here to improve human lives? And shouldn't we, in our awareness of how little generosity there is to help, measure, should we get them a measles vaccine or should we do some climate related activity? And if we stop funding all vaccines and that, saved you 0.1 degree, would that be a smart trade-off? That's the kind of question we have to ask. So I'm a climate activist, but I'm also a child survival activist.
Oh, so what do you think is going to be the critique of this? There are going to be people who are going to say that you are changing the goalposts because of this political climate as a way to placate President Trump, who has not been on the side of some of the net zero and obviously the Paris Climate Accord and things like that.
Well, I'm glad that some of the provisions that promoted new climate technologies got preserved. I was disappointed that a lot of that was taken away, but the provisions supporting nuclear and geothermal, some of those were maintained. The U.S. has pulled back, and that's a huge disappointment. We really need all the countries working together on this, just like we need them to be generous on their aid budget. If you think climate is the only problem and it's apocalyptic, or if you think climate's not a problem at all, my memo will make no sense to you. You'll be like, oh no, it should all be climate, or you'll be like, why are you even still talking about this climate thing? Why do you invest billions of your money into these companies? The middle position, that climate is super important, but has to be considered in terms of overall human welfare. I didn't pick that position because it's everybody agrees with it. It's, I think, intellectually the right answer.
Make this promise to Canadians. I will always be straight about the challenges that we face and the choices that we must make. And to be clear, we won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time.
Oh, yeah. I personally find it very confusing how any liberal voter, I'm sure you're naive, it's okay to be duped. I've been duped. I voted for Trudeau in 2015, believe it or not. So it was a big mistake. I wasn't watching or paying attention then, but I have been paying very close attention since 2023. And let me tell you, these guys don't care about your future. They want your money in their pockets, your future, your kids' future, your grandchildren's futures. in their pockets. See what they're doing to Canada with immigration. See what they're doing with housing. Check out what they're doing with our health care. What is better than it was in 2015? Absolutely nothing. It's confusing to me. On a lighter note, my name's Aaron. This is Canadian Loony. I work very hard at this channel, and believe me, I'm not a conservative. I will be voting that way. It seems to be the only way to get out from underneath this liberal conspiracy to destroy our way of being. And if you think like, oh, I don't want to admit that I was fooled or that I was raised liberal, so I'm still a liberal, change it up, because they have no plans for your future except lining their pockets with your tax dollars, laundering that money, spending it in other places so Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, all these hack bullshit ministers can get richer on your coin under the guise of being incompetent or negligent. Like, it's not that. They mean to be doing what they're doing, and they're pulling it off. There's no future for Canada under this government. So I watch all the committee meetings. I watch everything that happens in the House of Commons. I also follow the propaganda-driven news of the legacy media that is paid for by this government to dissuade your mind into some kind of trick to think that they're doing it for the benefit of you. It's not for you. Liberal voters, I'm speaking right to you. Please watch the politics, not the news. Like, watch the independents on YouTube. Do anything other than what you're doing, because if you're still being duped and not aware that you're being fooled, that's a huge issue. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Loony. Like, share, subscribe. I work very hard at this channel. Believe it or not, I spend 12 hours a day, 7 days a week at this, because it takes a lot of time to watch all of the politics. But that is where you get your real information. So I would appreciate your subscription. I know that a lot of people that watch this channel, 60% of the people that watch my channel aren't subscribed. I need you to subscribe. I'd like you to subscribe. I'm asking for that because this stuff is so censored, which is a part of legacy media, that it's hard to get any kind of word out. I know that there's other platforms. Just go to that. I know that a lot of people, liberal voters, watch YouTube, and I'm hoping they'll catch some of this and become informed. Learn a little more, because again, it's not a liberal conservative thing. It's an evil versus good thing. I'm not a conservative. Like, I will be voting that way because we need to get out from underneath this elephant that keeps squashing us. It's ridiculous. Please like, share, subscribe, get notified. Come check out one of our live shows. We cover Canadian federal politics right there, and I think you'd enjoy our chat room. It's the best that I've seen online. That's it, Aaron, Canadian Loony. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. We're gonna wrap it up right here. Out for now. Thanks for watching.